when Yosef reveals himself. And so it says like this. First of all, Yosef, let's just read the psukim again. It's in Pasuk Gimel, it's page 252. 252. Vayomer Yosef Elechov. Yosef says to his brothers, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai. It's right in the middle of the page, about 10 lines from the top. Vayomer Yosef Elechov, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai. I'm Yosef, my father's still alive. V'lo yochlu echav la'anoso so ki nivhalu mipanav. His brothers couldn't answer because they were afraid. So we said yesterday about the face of a tzaddik, and that all of a sudden they get a good look at who Yosef is, and how could you possibly have sold him, and so on and so forth. Now, I want to point out something. There's an interesting medrash. Now listen to the medrash start to finish. Sam, you might have heard it. I'm not positive. Usher, you might have heard it. The rest of you, I'm sure you haven't. The medrash says like this. Pay attention, you got to follow the start to finish. There's a medrash that says, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up to get the Torah, so he said to God, he realizes there's a moment of grace. So he says to God, I would like to know how your justice works in the world. How does divine justice work? I know there's a lot of things. There's a famous question, Tzaddik Varela, why did the righteous suffer? Why did the righteous suffer? So Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, why do the righteous suffer? Why do the wicked prosper? Show me, give me an insight into how you run the world. So God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, I'll give you an insight, and it's only the tip of the iceberg. You can understand a little bit as much a human being is capable of understanding. I'll try to help you to understand a little bit. So God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, watch the following. He shows Moshe Rabbeinu a vision. In this vision, Moshe Rabbeinu sees a soldier riding on a horse. Soldier's riding on the horse. It's a very hot day. And the soldier gets to a water hole. He gets off the horse. He goes to the water hole. He bends down to take a drink. And as he's drinking, he got a pouch full of gold coins, and it falls. He doesn't notice it. Finishes drinking, and he gets back on his horse, rides away. A short time later, a 12-year-old boy comes by, goes to take a drink, and he notices the pouch. He opens the pouch, peeks in, stuffed with gold coins, goes running home happily. Short time later, an old man comes by, goes over to the water hole, takes a drink, lies down, takes a nap. In the meantime, the soldier's on his horse. He touches his pocket, can't find the money. He realizes the only place he could possibly be has got to be back at the water hole. So he turns around and goes back to the water hole. He sees the old man is sleeping. He kicks the old man and wakes him up. He says, okay, quickly, old man, give me back my money. You found my pouch, give me the money. The old man said, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, listen, you're the only one who's been here since I left. You found my pouch, I want the money, or I'm going to kill you. The old man says, I didn't find any money. The soldier's got no patience, pulls out his sword, runs him through. Searches his pockets, and he doesn't find any money. Soldier gets back on his horse, rides off. And with that, the vision fades. God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you see there's perfect justice in the world, that's how I run my world. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I don't see anything just about this at all. So Rabbi says, okay, let's see if I could try to enlighten you a little bit. I want to show you another vision. In the second vision, he shows Moshe Rabbeinu a forest. In the middle of the forest, there's a clearing. There's a father is walking along, young father is walking along with his 2-year-old son. They're walking through the clearing in the forest. And as they're walking, Moshe Rabbeinu notices that back in the thickness of the forest, there's a soldier sitting on a horse. He's got a perfect view of this clearing. And he's just watching this father walking along with his son. Suddenly, from the other side of the forest, a bandit jumps out of the woods, grabs the father, they start rolling around on the ground. The soldier watches, doesn't get involved. The bandit overpowers the father, kills the father, searches the father's pockets, and he finds a pouch stuffed with gold coins. He grabs the pouch and he starts running off. In his haste to run away, he carelessly drops the pouch. The soldier who's been watching the entire scene unfold notices the pouch fall. So he comes riding in, and he picks up the pouch, and he rides off. And again, the vision fades. At this point, my wife interjected and said, how did the little boy get home? But okay, that was my wife's question. So that's what the Medrash says. He comes in, and he picks up the pouch, and he rides off. And again, the vision fades. And God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, now do you understand my justice in the world? And Moshe Rabbeinu says, absolutely clueless, more than the first time. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, again, I will explain it to you now, but just realize this is the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip of the iceberg, just to give you an insight. It says to Moshe Rabbeinu, the vision that you saw first at the water hole actually took place 10 years after the vision in the forest. The vision I showed you first actually took place later. The soldier who lost the pouch at the water hole 10 years earlier was a soldier in the forest who found that pouch when the thief dropped it running away. The 12-year-old boy who found the pouch at the water hole 10 years earlier was a 2-year-old toddler whose father was brutally murdered, should have inherited the money then, and it took 10 years, and eventually he got the money 10 years later at the water hole. And the little old man who was brutally murdered at the water hole 10 years earlier was a young bandit. He murdered somebody else, and therefore he was murdered at the water hole. And the very same soldier who should have intervened in the forest to stop him was the same soldier 10 years later who caught him at the water hole and eventually killed him. Because Baruch says to Moshe Rabbeinu, see, everything works out. Everything works out. You just got to know the key. Yeah, you just got to know. You got to know. You have to have the answers to the questions. The questions you have. So the unfortunate say, imagine how the brothers are feeling right now. Imagine how the brothers are feeling. They came to Egypt, and there's a libel, there's monies put back, and then a goblet, and this guy seems to know a lot about the family, and everything is happening here, and they're just wondering, what the heck is going on here? What is going? And then Yosef says to them 2 words, Ani Yosef. Oh, you mean, all right. There we are. It's almost like one of those films, the last scene in the movie, right? And the last scene in the movie, where finally the final scene in the movie, one of these intrigue movies, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you mean he was a double agent? Oh, he was with them all. Oh, he was really a good guy. Oh, and everything also gets clear. So the Chafetz Chaim says, when Yosef said the 2 words, Ani Yosef, you know how many questions melted away? He says, we all have questions. Every human being has questions. I have questions. Why this? Why didn't this happen? Why did this happen? Why did it have to happen? Why did it happen to him? Why didn't it happen to me? Why did it happen to me? Why didn't it happen to him? And eventually, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say 2 words, Ani Hashem. And then everything's clear. Everything's cleared up. Everything's cleared up. Did you ever leave a movie and you're in the parking lot? There's always a guy explaining to another. There's always a guy standing with his foot up on the bumper of a car, and his friend's always saying to him, "No, he was a bad guy from the beginning. He's the guy. No, he was." And the other guy goes, "Oh yeah, oh, that was me. That was me. I was always the guy. I was always the guy. Somebody even when the movie ended, I was clueless. What? That was it. I had one friend who could hop it from the beginning of the movie. From the beginning of the movie, he already could tell you exactly what's going to happen. He was always explaining to me afterwards, during and afterwards, what just happened, what I didn't understand. That's what the reports say. That's Ani Yosef. Ani Yosef Odavichai. Now, watch the next pasuk. Pasuk Hey. Ve'ato, pasuk Hey. 7 lines from the bottom. And Yosef says like this. Sorry, pasuk Daled. Vayomer Yosef Elechav. Sorry, pasuk Daled. 10 lines from the bottom. Vayomer Yosef Elechav. Yosef says to his brother, Gishuna Eli, approach me. Vayigashu, and they approach. Vayomer Ani Yosef Achichem Asher Mechartem Osim Mitzrayim. I am Yosef, your brother, who you sold to Egypt. Now, first of all, the Meforshim say, that right there, I'm Yosef, who you sold to Egypt. That right there is the ultimate form of identification. In other words, the guy says, I'm Yosef, your long-lost brother. Can you identify? Do you have any proof? He says, yeah, you sold me to Egypt. Why is that the proof?
Because no one else was there.
No one else knew about it. Exactly correct. The only one who could possibly know about that is Yosef, because Yosef was the one who was sold. So Yosef says, I'm Yosef. But look what Rashi says. Rashi is on the left column, 3 lines from the top. And Rashi says something outlandish. Gishuna Eli, 3 line, left column, 3 lines from the top, on page 252. 252, left column in Rashi. Left column. Gishuna Eli, Ra osam nisogim la'ochar. He saw them backing away. Amar achshav ochai nichlamim. My brothers are embarrassed. Kara lehem berloshon raka v'tachanunim. He called them gently. I'm Yosef, I'm your brother. Approach me, come near, don't be afraid. And then Rashi says, V'her lahem shehu mohol. He showed them he was circumcised. Now, that's everybody's reaction to that Rashi. Everybody's reaction is like, well, that's indiscreet. That's somewhat indiscreet. Okay, but okay. Okay. I guess under the circuit, but okay. It's still a little So the commentator, it doesn't mean literally that he showed them that he was circumcised. What he did was he said to them, look, if you remember earlier in Parshat Miketz, Yosef had decreed that all the Egyptians should circumcise. Now, one of the reasons he decreed that was because he knew if his brothers come look into Egypt, looking around, and they see somebody circumcised, it'll be an easy way to find him. So that way everybody's circumcised. That blocks off the identifying him. What Yosef is telling them now is, look, I'm circumcised, meaning ask around a little bit. Where did this idea get? You see the Egyptians are circumcised. Why don't you ask them whose idea this was? Ask around. If you ask around, you'll see they got the idea from me. Where did I get the idea from? Because I'm Yosef, I'm circumcised. So go to Egypt and ask them, look, he showed them he was circumcised. Don't literally mean he showed them. Nobody's going to do that. It means he showed them, I can prove to you that I'm circumcised. You know why? Just look around. If you look around, the whole country's circumcised. Whose idea was that? And if you'll ask around, you'll see that was my idea. That's the way of identifying that you're circumcised. So Yosef calls them over.
Wait a second, he circumcised the entire nation?
No,
himself?
That's one. Listen, the brothers Yosef, Shimon and Levi had all the people of Shem circumcise themselves, and then they killed them. Right?
That's true, yeah,
right.
yeah.
So there's a deeper idea. There's a deeper idea here that Yosef. The commentaries say, "Oh, you want to go deeper? I'll take you deeper if you want." The commentaries say the whole incident with Yosef and Mrs. Potiphar. Why do you have to go through that? You have to go through. Here's a kid. Here's a 17-year-old, good-looking guy, 17 years old. He's in the den of iniquity. Imagine a 17-year-old. He's on the campus of Florida State University. Good-looking guy, 17 years old, miles away from home. Now, what does he do? I mean, it's not hard enough. What, he's got to go through that with a man's wife chasing him around? He's got to go through it. What's the whole point? So the whole point, and the circumcision as well. The whole point is, remember what I told you a few days ago, that Egypt is the root of immorality in the world. They knew prophetically the Jewish people are going to end up in Egypt for a couple of hundred years. They have to weaken the drive for immorality so the Jewish people can maintain their purity. Part of the circumcising Egypt at a deeper level has to do with affecting the spiritual forces that are involved in this area. Now we're already into Kabbalistic ideas. I can't tell you any more about it because I don't know any more about it. But that's what the commentaries say. I can at least tell you what they say. What they mean by that is beyond my realm of understanding for sure. But what they take it into the area of, we believe that there are spiritual components in life. Do you know, you want to hear something interesting? Do you know every blade of grass, the Gemara says every blade of grass has an angel that says to grow. Every blade of grass has an angel that tells it to grow. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that everything in the physical world has a spiritual counterpart. By the way, whatever you picture an angel to be, it isn't. Right? That we understand. Whatever you're picturing, it isn't. When we talk about malachim, angels, and that sort of thing, everything in the physical realm has a spiritual component. Let's take it even further. Do you know that witchcraft is prohibited? You know what the Hebrew word for witchcraft is? Kishuf. Kishuf. Kishuf is witchcraft. The Torah says, a pasuk, when it prohibits witchcraft, it says, Mechashefa lo sechaya. A witch must not be allowed to live. Mechashefa lo sechaya. Where does the word kishuf come from? Kishuf, the commentaries say, the Gemara says like this: what is witchcraft? And we believe that there was authentic witchcraft, not just sleight of hand witchcraft. There's authentic witchcraft. So what is authentic witchcraft? What is the definition? So the commentaries define it like this. Again, let's go to that blade of grass. Everything in the physical realm has a spiritual counterpart. Witchcraft is the ability to tap into the higher forces and cross them over and do things to manipulate them in such a way that they have an effect in the physical world. It actually shows an effect in the physical world. It's severely prohibited, punishable by stoning. It's a cousin of idol worship. But that's what it is, the definition. And again, I'm only at ground level over here. I don't you're into, you'd have to know all sorts of Kabbalistic ideas in order to know the ins and outs of it. But the basic definition of witchcraft is that somebody is able to tap into the higher forces and bring about an effect in the spiritual realm, which is prohibited. The word kishuf, the Gemara says, comes from makchishim. A person who performs witchcraft is interfering in the heavenly spheres. He's interfering in the heavenly spheres. By the way, do you ever hear abracadabra? Yeah. Have you ever heard how closely related it is to two Hebrew words? Yeah. Ivra, kidibra. Ivra kedibra means, I will create as I speak. How's that for a coincidence? Abracadabra, Ivra kedibra. You know, it's a little too close. You know, I don't go for this stuff usually, but that's a little too close. That's a little too close for it to be a coincidence. Ivra kedibra. I will create as I speak. As a matter of fact, you know, the Gemara says the way that you become immune to witchcraft is by connecting yourself to water.
What?
If somebody is casting spells on you and you want to stay immune to the spell, get connected to water. Put your feet in water. Get connected to water. Get into a body of water. Sound familiar? Remind you of anything? How did Dorothy kill the Wicked Witch of the West? Right? Splashes water on her. Isn't that interesting? Interesting. So I imagine there were some Jewish writers, some yeshiva high school dropouts who were helping write the movie. You know, they just remembered that that was one of the things they remember from class. They put it in. I don't know if there were Jewish writers there in the dropouts or not, but I'm assuming there were. So probably right. And they, you know, some kid would remember that from Hebrew school or something. Yeah, let's put that in. You know. So all of this, you understand. So when you ask, you know, why did he have the whole land? And it's a much deeper idea here. The much deeper idea is he wants to get some sort of calming influence in this area because the Jewish people are going to be locked up here for 210 years and he wants them, and that's why the Gemara says that the Jewish people were involved in idol worship in Egypt, but they were not involved in immorality. The Jewish people were not involved in immorality in Egypt. The strength of being able to overcome that was put in here on the male side by Yosef, by running away from Mrs. Potiphar. Where is it on the female side? How did the women stay strong? Remember, Sarah Imenu was taken by Paro?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no coincidence, Alex. No coincidence. This is a woman who's with a husband who right now doesn't have any finances. She's taken by the king, and the king's telling her, hey, lady, I'm going to make you the queen. You're going to be the queen here. You got everything now. You got everything. Mm-hmm. And he's going to make you the queen. Do you understand the temptation that she had to undergo? She's got a husband who's helpless, poor, and she's got a king who's got everything. He's the most powerful man in the world. And they understand the pressure she's under, and all she has to do is submit. All she has to do is submit. And she doesn't. She withstands it. That gives the women the strength on a spiritual level to withstand any of the temptations in Egypt. And therefore, the Jewish people come out pure. There are no coincidences, there, gentlemen. No coincidence. That's what Sarah, on a deeper level, that's really what's going on. Okay. Now, let's watch even more. Let's see even more. Says Yosef in Pasuk, hey, 4 lines from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Ve'ata al te'atzu, and now do not be upset. Ve'al yichar be'inechem, ki mechartem ozihena. Don't be upset that you sold me. Ki lemichya shlachani eloki lifnechem. Hashem sent me ahead of you to be able to provide you with life. Wait, you're upset that you sold me? Nothing to be upset about. This all worked out for the best. Now you understand what Yosef is really doing is bending over backwards to make them feel they shouldn't feel bad. It's like a guy carelessly rams his car into you, and then you end up getting a couple $1 million in a settlement. And he said, hey, it was all for it. Don't worry about it. It's okay that you were drunk and doing 90 on a side street because, you know, it all worked out. It's really not your fault. Nothing to be upset about. I made out like a bandit over here. Right? That's what Yosef is saying. That's what Yosef is saying. Now, there are 2 problems here. First of all, are you familiar with the idea that on Yom Kippur, we mention in Musaf the story of the 10 martyrs? Rabbi Akiva and the 10 martyrs who were all killed, they were all brutally tortured to death by the Romans. There's a dirge in the Yom Kippur service. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Chanina ben Teradian, Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Elisha, Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Shemen Gamliel. The 10 martyrs, there's a whole list of 10 people who were brutally killed by the Romans. Now, in the dirge, they didn't. It's an interesting thing. You'll see it in Yom Kippur. We say it on Tisha B'Av as well. First of all, there were the 10 sages who did not live in the same generation. They did not see each other. The way it's put for poetic license in order to tug at our heartstrings in the Yom Kippur service, it's recorded as a conversation between the Roman emperor and these 10 sages. Now, that conversation never took place because the 10 of them never stood together. But it's poetic license, part of what we call the piyutim, the dirges that are put in the tefillah. Now, the way it starts is he says to them, listen, your Torah says that kidnapping and selling is punishable by death. We never find in the Torah that Yosef's brothers who were guilty of kidnapping and selling, we never find that they got a punishment. There have never been 10 tzaddikim since then, 10 tzaddikim like you, and therefore you're going to pay for that crime. And they are executed, each one of them. One is burnt to death, and Rabbi Kiva is raked. His skin is raked apart. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's head is chopped off. Rabbi Shmuel, they peel the skin off his face. Each one of them has a terrible death. And the way it's recorded is that is a payback. According to some, they are a reincarnation of the 10 tribes. The Arizal Kabbalistically says each one of the 10 was one of the 10 tribes reincarnated. We'll come back to that in a second. Look at the wording of the pasuk. The commentators say, look what Yosef says. Ve'ata, and now al te'atzu, don't be upset. You got it? Now, don't be upset. But there will be, in the future, there's going to be some sort of accountability. There will be an accountability in the future. Ve'ata, and now al te'atzu, don't be upset. Okay? Good so far. Because it's going to be the accountability of the 10 martyrs later on. Okay, now fair.
To putting the accountability on the 10 martyrs, it really just sounds like the Romans wanted to murder some rabbis.
They did, but according to our tradition, there's a connection. According to our Kabbalistic, there's a connection, especially when it's the same neshamas. The Romans, remember, they from their motive, from their side, they probably just care, let's kill the rabbis. But what's happening, there's no coincidences, and the right person ends up at the well where the soldiers sat, right? So you understand, so God brings about, okay, it's time for them to the accountability for the sale. Now, you ready for something? Fasten your seatbelts. Turn all the way to the book, to Parshat Matos. It's the last Parsha, second to last Parsha in the book of Bamidbar. The Torah here is talking about people who make a neder, people who make vows. And the Torah says if a woman makes a vow, her husband has the right to annul it. Because a woman is subjugated to her husband. She's obligated to her husband. And the Torah says if a woman makes a vow, if on the day, without going into the halachic deal, on the day she made the vow, if the husband hears the vow, he could say veto. He could say, so it says, I'm making a vow that I'm not going to eat red meat for a month. The husband hears about the vow, he says veto. Because he knows if his wife goes off for red meat, she doesn't eat red meat, she's going to be in a bad mood, she's going to be crabby, the house is going to fall apart. He doesn't want veto. He's got veto power. Okay, that's Allah. We'll see when we get there, Mitzvah Hashem. But that's what the Allah says. Now, the Torah then says like this. What about a woman who made a vow, and her husband vetoes the vow, but she never heard him say veto? Means a woman says, you know what, no red meat for me. And her husband's in the next room watching a ball game, and he says veto. The vow is ultimately, it's not binding. The vow is not binding, right? The vow is vetoed. She doesn't have to hear it. What if this woman then goes the next day, she doesn't know the vow has been vetoed, she opens up the refrigerator, she sees a nice thick steak, and she says, you know what, vow or no vow, I'm having a steak. And she goes and she makes a kosher steak. She makes a kosher steak, which she still believes that is forbidden to her because she made a vow. And she goes and she eats the steak. Has she sinned? Careful now, careful now. Has she sinned?
Her intention is
Right.
and then
Right.
she acted in opposition to her own intention.
Correct.
That is a sin.
Correct. Has she eaten forbidden meat?
No.
Okay, it'd be no different than you open up the refrigerator and you see a big piece of meat that says pork on it. And you decide, yeah, I've always wanted it. And you look around, nobody's watching, and you take a bite of pork, and then your brother comes in the room and says, hey, do you see how I carved that chicken into, made it look like pork? You go, rats, right? Now, did you eat pork? Did you eat pork? No. Right. Did you do something that's certainly against the spirit of the law? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But you didn't eat pork. You didn't eat pork. This woman did not eat forbidden meat. I'll show you why we're doing this. So look at what the pasuk says. V'im hafer yafer osam isha b'yom sham'o. If her husband vetoes the vow on the day he hears it, kol motzes vasel lindareh lisar nafsha lo yakum. Then anything that she has vowed, it doesn't work. He's vetoed it. And then the pasuk ends with isha haferam. Her husband has vetoed it. V'Hashem yislach la, but Hashem should forgive her. So the Gemara says, what do you mean Hashem should forgive her? Her husband vetoed it. If he vetoed it, what's there to forgive her about? Says the Gemara, the Torah is talking about a scenario over here that I just described. where she made a vow, he vetoed it, she didn't know, she purposely did something against her own vow, but technically she wasn't, she didn't transgress. Hashem yislach la, she still needs an atonement. Did she eat forbidden meat? No, she didn't. But we're going to get her on, did she murder anybody? There's a difference, even in secular law. There's a difference between a murder and attempted murder. There's still a difference. It's attempted murder, but you didn't kill him. What do you want? I didn't kill him. It was attempted murder. There's a big difference in the judgment you're going to get. Big difference. So the Gemara says she needs an atonement because she attempted. She attempted. Didn't work out, but she attempted. Okay, now pay attention carefully. There's a statement the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva. Anytime Rabbi Akiva, when he read the Torah, he would get to this verse over here. The Gemara says Rabbi Akiva would cry. Why would Rabbi Akiva cry? Rabbi Akiva said, if when you tried to do an Aveira and you didn't succeed, you need an atonement. So if you tried to do an Aveira and you did succeed, all the more so you need an atonement. And when he was overwhelmed by this pasuk and he cried. When Rabbi Akiva got the Gemara says, when Rabbi Akiva would get to this pasuk, he would cry. I only have one question. Other Tanoim, other sages in the Gemara also read this pasuk. There were Tanoim before. Hillel and Shammai came before Rabbi Akiva. There were other Tanoim who read this pasuk. Why did Rabbi Akiva cry? Only Rabbi Akiva, when he got to this pasuk, he cried. How come Hillel didn't cry? How come Shammai didn't cry? How come Rabbi Gamliel didn't cry? Rabbi Akiva cried. He was about tshuva. He was actually an FFB who had not learned much. Okay. So no, listen to this. Listen to this. Remember I told you that the 10 tribes are the reincarnation the 10 sages are reincarnation of 10 tribes? And according to the Arizal, Rabbi Akiva is the reincarnation. Rabbi Akiva is the neshama of Shimon. Shimon was the one who was the catalyst of the sale of Yosef. So what did Yosef say? He said, don't be upset. Nothing bad came of it. Yeah, but what does the Torah tell you over here? Maybe nothing bad came of it, but when you attempt to do something, even if it doesn't work out, you're still accountable. So every time Rabbi Akiva sees this, and his neshama is the Gilgul, is the reincarnation of Shimon, so Rabbi Akiva senses at some neshama level that as Shimon, the catalyst of the sale, then there's going to be a punishment of some sort, and it's going to be a bad one. So when Rabbi Akiva sees this pasuk, Rabbi Akiva cries. Why is he crying? He's crying because this connects back to the original sale of Yosef. He's crying because this means that as the tribes, we still, our intention was bad. Good, there's a God in the world who made things work out well. It had nothing to do with us. Our intention was negative. Our intention was negative, exactly what Ian says. You're accountable. Your intention was negative. You're still accountable. You're not a tzaddik. We're not going to give you shlishi because you tried. It didn't work out. Oh, Rabbi Akiva senses that at a neshama level. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva's crying. I don't even know if Rabbi Akiva knew why he was crying. But at some level, there's a sense there's going to be payback. And Rabbi Akiva's death is the worst death of all of them. That's why Rabbi Akiva's crying. It all connects up. It's all one Torah, gentlemen.